says below, I'll be working through the initial stages of designing and building an environmental dashboard using Rhino and Grasshopper. This is a true working session, so nothing's been pre-planned. I'm just here at my desk, well, technically in a small conference room, gonna work through the script and see what I can create and see what I can break to help our designers make informed decisions. So I'll try to talk through what I'm doing as I work in Rhino and Grasshopper. If I don't, and there's a moment of silence and you are wondering what's happening, let me know, and yeah, we'll get started. All right. So there's a few different tools that I could use. We have the Ladybug suite. So there's like the Ladybug suite of tools. We have the Diva suite for environmental analysis. And then on the UI side, we have, hold on, we may have audio issues. All right, I think we are good. So on the UI side, we have human UI, which we could use. There is Conduit, I believe, is a Proving Grounds tool. And then there's a few utility tools native in Grasshopper. So let's kind of get going. I'm gonna start building off of Ladybug. So we have an environmental dashboard ideas list of things that have been allocated or put on a wish list for this dashboard. So I'm going to be using that kind of as my roadmap to figure out what to build. And that's going to be on my other screen here, so that you guys can see full screen, Grasshopper and Rhino. I'm also going to change my display mode to ghosted, as sometimes Ladybug does not like the Arctic view. So there we go. Now I gotta find Ladybug. There we go. Lucky choice. I have too many plugins. It's ridiculous. Alright, so I'm gonna launch Ladybug using the Ladybug component. That's going to initialize the plugin in Grasshopper. And I'm currently running the latest update of Ladybug, which is 0067. It's not the one we are pushing out to everyone in HMC, as wanted to make sure it was stable, but everyone should be getting that update soon. So I need to find the EPW file, which is just the weather file that will give me all the data to use in the analysis. So I'm going to use a few components for that. That would be the Ladybug import EPW. I believe it's, nope. So I don't use Ladybug all that often, so a lot of times I'm just trying to remember which components I actually need to use. So the download EPW weather file is a component I'll need, and then open EPW weather file. There is probably another way to do this, but this is the way I like to go about it. I can start deleting some of the stuff that I don't need. Anyways, so now I have these kind of my first few components here. We're going to grab a toggle, false start toggle. Not sure why I have two. This is nice, a nice component because every time you save, exit, and then reopen this file, the false start toggle is always going to reset back to false. So if you have a file where you have a lot of components that require to be ran in sequence or whatnot, or maybe it takes a really long time for different processes, that's a great one to use because every time you open the file, you don't want to crash your machine or you don't want it to bog down at all. Also, I'm going to try and find the YouTube chat just to make sure I am aware of what's going on. All right. So back to Grasshopper. I'm going to make my Rhino window smaller. I tend to like to use 2 screens for Rhino and Grasshopper. Gives you more canvas space on the Grasshopper side as Rhino starts to become a viewer for Grasshopper. So a lot of times the Rhino UI is not as critical or important. So this is what I'll do for now until I start developing the heads-up display portion. So I'm going to want to download an EPW file. So to do that, I'm going to toggle that Boolean toggle to true. It's going to bring me to the Ladybug EPW file map. I'm going to zoom in here to Sacramento because that's where I'm at. And I'm going to copy the link address here. And then I'm going to grab a panel and I'm going to paste that link address into that panel, and then I'm going to hook that up to this import or open EPW file. So the positive about linking up a weather file URL is it's going to stay constant. I don't know how often they update that. But then also if you're exchanging files with people in different offices, you don't have to worry about where that file is located. It's always going to be at the same address on the web, hopefully. And if not, you can always just go re-download it. But that is definitely a surefire way, I guess, to keep it consistent. So now that we have, I guess, our EPW file imported, we can start to digest some of this data. I don't know if I switch in between the two, but however you want to say it. So we have the information like that, actual location, or I guess not actual location, but a little bit more clear or specific. So you have your lat, your longitude, time zone, elevation, and then the text description there as well. And then we go down to dry bulb, dew, your relative humidity, wind speed, wind direction, and whatnot. So a lot of data here to go through. So I think the first chart we're going to make is going to be a Windrose chart. So let's pull up the Ladybug Windrose component. And so this component is going to look, I can go over kind of the overall, like how these components inform the users on what they need. So usually if there's an underscore in the beginning, that is a required input. So this component is not going to work if you do not have hourly wind direction or just wind direction or your wind speed. And then all the other inputs are optional. So anything with the underscore at the end or underscore front and back, those are optional. Those are not required. So like this, the north direction is a default value that's set 0. So if you want to change that, you can for true north. We're not going to for this portion. So I'm going to start hooking this stuff up. The hourly wind direction. So I'm going to grab the wind direction, and then I'm going to grab the wind speed. Something that kind of bugs me about this is I wish we could switch those two inputs so that the wires would hook up a little bit nicer. And I'm sure I could make that change, but I'm not going to. So now that I have that Windrose, or the two mandatory or required inputs, let me check real quick. I can now run that component. So this is where that false start toggle is going to come in handy, because I don't want this to be set to true every time I open up the file, because I don't want to have to worry about it crashing my computer or everything calculating at once. So we'll see if, there we go. So then this is our result. This is telling us the wind speed, direction, frequency of the wind in this area. So this is data from the Sacramento International Airport. And so this information I'm going to want to try and hide in the actual 3D environment, and I'm going to want to bring it up into a heads-up display so that while people are designing, they can have that information readily available to them. So the tools that we can use for that would be Human UI, sorry, which is Grasshopper kind of user interface builder. I'm not sure that this is the best route to go. We can try it, and I'm not necessarily a pro at all of these plugins. I mean, there's so many of them. So I'm sure there's something that I am going to be missing. But yeah, so this is really good for lists and graphs and having sliders and picking colors and checklists and whatnot. But projecting meshes onto a panel, a human UI panel, I'm not sure how that is going to work. Because that's what we have after this component. This component is creating meshes. And so we want to be able to extract those meshes and then project them into either a panel using human UI or up onto the actual viewport area or viewport screen. So let's go this route first. I think using human UI, I think creating a 3D view is probably going to be the best way to go, because we're not looking at images here. I don't know if there's a way to convert a mesh to an image. It seems like that is going to be too big of a hack, really. So yeah, we're gonna stick with create 3D view, potentially create browser, and then we're gonna also need to create the windows that these elements are going to be placed in. So I'm going to grab the add elements component, and that's going to add the elements to the window that we create. And then I'm also going to grab a launch window component. And that's going to be a child of Grasshopper window. So, or we could just say always on top, which is also not a bad choice. And it's going to be it's always going to remain on top of both of these programs. So a few things that we need a Boolean toggle so that we can set to true to show the window. And I think that's the only one we need for this component to run. We can change the name, the width, the height, and then the font family. Usually font family I leave alone, and definitely make sure if you are going to change the font family now that Grasshopper is running Mac Windows, to use a systems font that is on both. Not sure if Arial times Roman. I think those should be safe bets. All right, so let's do this. Let's grab a false start toggle. I hit enter there to automatically populate that. And what you don't see, because it's on my other screen, or maybe you do, is this control window that pops up. So now that's our window. We can set the default width and the default height if we wanted to. I'm not going to worry about that quite yet because I have no graphic content to keep visible. And then the name, I'll just type in environmental dash. For now, that would be my short name. So I want to take this mesh, essentially. So let's see. If I grab a mesh component, I can preview this, or disable the preview, so we can figure out what mesh I want to display. So that is the actual Windrose information. This is the whole entire I guess structure of that graph. So you got your north, south, east, west indicators, and then the rings that circle out. And so first I want to use this information, but I'll need to clean it up so that all we're grabbing is probably north, south, east, west, and then as well as just the concentric rings here. I don't want to grab a surface or anything, because that's going to get, I think, really muddy really quickly. And so let's try to move this over to the window over here. So I'm going to hook this up to the mesh to display, which is create 3D view component from Human UI, and then the mesh colors. So let's see. So now I have my mesh. This component is active. I have my window. That component is active. I need to add my elements to the window. So I'm going to connect the window here to window. And then I'm going to connect my elements here to elements. And so you see here that this Windrose geometry is populating in this browser, which is pretty cool. The only thing is that we don't have the color. So I'm not entirely sure. That doesn't work. Because the color is baked into the mesh geometry. Let's see. I'm not entirely sure how I would extract that color from the mesh. Not sure if a Weaver bird would work. I could Google something, maybe. Color mesh extraction. Grasshopper. It might be faster for me to test out another technique and then come back if those don't work out. Let's see, maybe there's some stuff in the mesh analysis tab that we could use. Let's look at what is coming out of this. Let's see what this is going to do for us. At a certain point, this is just testing different components to see what they do. So I'm not sure. There's a comment from Jake to see if I can pass hatches to Human UI. I don't think that I can. But let's see what this is going to do for me. So this is going to bake the hatches into the Rhino scene. So now that information is in Rhino. So the output is to Rhino, not to Grasshopper. Let's see if there's another component. Hatch component from Ladybug, I guess. Maybe Control Alt and click. It's kind of annoying. I think it does that for all of these. Yeah, all of these components are Python script components. And so for some reason, when I try to query their location, they go straight to the original component, not to the actual tab, not the Ladybug tab. So that was, I mean, good, a nice shot. I've never even used the mesh to hatch tool from Ladybug, so it's pretty cool that that is available to us. But yeah, it definitely does not work in this situation. So let's see what, I'm just going to type in screen to see what options I have, and I can render different different types of geometry to the screen. So let's see, this is render mesh to screen, so this is going to be a bit different. So I'm going to plug in my mesh there. It's going to ask for the location as a point, I believe. Yeah, so as a point, so I'll do X, Y, Z. Not a vector. Point. And we're going to leave the Z at 0. So, and I'm going to have a slider that I think let's do 1,000, yeah. And we'll start it there. And I can hide this point. And then plug that into location. So now you can see like the difference between these two. The geometry or the color data is moving with this component. But with Human UI, when I try to project that geometry up to that window, the color is just a default red, just based off of this information. And I'm not sure, I don't think we can try a gradient. Just want some random numbers. So even number 0. Number it doesn't change. It's changed slightly. I don't know if you can see that, but still not giving me the desired results. Yeah, it just still seems to be a solid color. I guess before I give up on Human UI and move to the project to screen component, I'll dig into the UI elements again, just to make sure I haven't missed anything specific. Create a 3D image view. No, it does not look like that is going to be the right option. For this tool. So I'm going to scrap this window for now, potentially use it later on for some other portions of that tool, but not for at least displaying the 3D geometry, as that doesn't seem to work very well. Okay, so let's move over to this mesh project or render mesh to screen component. And then I think we're going to have to adjust the scale, 0.01, but we want the max to be set at 1, I believe. That would make sense in my brain. Yeah, there we go. And now let's move this element up here. So the nice thing about this is if we are modeling a building, sometimes we might not want that to be rendered in the actual environment. So if we come here, we can preview these things or toggle these things off. That is the hatch we baked. So now it just appears as if that graphic is a part of my user interface. So now I can come in here and I can model a cube and evaluate, okay, this is north, that's south, so a lot of my wind hours, I believe, frequency is going to be from the south. And so it's nice to have that information just always there for you. And that way, if you're modeling a whole site campus, you don't have to zoom out to view the information. It's always going to be there up on the screen. So now, to complete this graphic, we're going to need to grab that text and then those concentric circles in order to map that, make it a little bit more clear. It's an okay graphic, but we want the actual data to come along with it, or at least most of the data to come along with that. So I'm going to copy that by holding down Alt, or dragging and then holding down Alt. That's going to copy that component. And then I'm going to right click and preview that. And then move that to the Windrose curves. And then I'm also going to view this panel and see what information we have. So we have some polyline curves, some line-like curves. We have circular curves, and then some meshes. I'm going to assume the meshes outputting, having output from that are the text. So let's see, split list. I'm going to split that list. I'm going to split it, I believe I should be splitting that at 30. So 30, index 30, because that's where the mesh begins. So that hopefully should split this list and split it into curves and mesh. So now when I bring this out, I have all of the text right there. So I bring that and I add it here. Of course, it's not going to work. There we go. So that works. It just needs to be adjusted a little bit. And now it's taking up 80% of my viewport. So we're going to need to make the Grasshopper canvas smaller and this a little bit bigger. So it's pretty cool now that it's not as big, but we're going to probably scale that down a bit. The only issue I could see is that depending on what scale that information is, it might begin to lose the benefit, I guess, of that data. We don't want it too small because we want it to be legible, and we want people to be able to understand it, but we also don't want it to take up the whole entire screen. So, all right, that seemed to work out well. I'm going to delete that component, and I'm going to preview that off, and also preview this off because I don't want to see those there. So now I'm going to try to project those lines up there. Render, I think. Render line. Render curve to screen. Let's see. Location. We're going to use same location. Okay, that's working. And we're going to use the same scale. And that seems pretty easy. Easier than I was expecting, which is good. The only thing I don't like is I don't like the color. Grab a color swatch, bring that here. I think a nice like dark gray, something that stands out in contrast to the Rhino gray environment, but isn't as stark in comparison to the just like straight black. And then I'm going to do some cleanup here. So I'm going to use this relay component, and you may have found that disappeared out of nowhere like magic, and that is because it did. The relay component is one of my favorite components when working with big files. You can double click on the canvas and type in relay, I believe. And that component is going to come up. But if you want to be cool, you can just double click on a wire and it's going to automatically separate that wire. So what you can do here is you can use this relay. You can label it as mesh to display. So now I know that anything plugged into this component is going to be my mesh, and it's going to be projected to my display. And so now I can plug in all of my meshes into that relay, and then I can take that wire and remove it from that component. So that kind of cleans everything up here. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want to see if I can get the black lines in the background, and sometimes that has to do with order of operation, meaning that I had the last I guess component I used was render curves to screen, and so I think that overlays on whatever is already existing on the screen. So hopefully, no, not at all, completely wrong. It just is what it is, which is fine. Yeah, so now we have the Windrose projected up into the screen. The only thing I don't like about this is, for some reason, from different viewpoints in the model, it's gonna disappear. I don't know if that's gonna be a huge deal, as it's pretty much stable. So yeah, right now that is the only bug that I see with this information. So let's add a title to that potentially. I think that's the right route to go. Oh, Evan just commented, if I move the Z coordinate up a bit, maybe that will reduce that bug, I think, is what he's trying to say to me. I don't know if it's doing anything. Oh, no, that's not what you're saying. He's saying so that I could overlay the mesh on top of the curves, so that the curves will disappear. No, not even that. Come on. I'm not sure that's actually going to work. Nice try. Man, it's doing something. Let's go, Kurt. Let's go. Just get wild. Wild. Oh, man. Yeah, it's doing nothing for me. Good thought, though. I think I have it all hooked up correctly. Yeah, that's the mesh. So I want that to be higher than the lines. Scale with viewport. It's actually not a bad option. Kind of like that. Guess I'm going to get rid of this location marker and then add that one back in, and then adjust the scale and the location again because that changed. Alrighty. And so now this is going to scale with the viewport, which is really handy because you don't want to be trying to show a client a tool and reducing your window. So you have more room for Grasshopper, but now you can't see your model. So that's pretty cool. So last thing I think we should do for the Windrose would be, well, moving it a little bit, because it's being, information's being blocked. Maybe, yeah, location's not the biggest issue we're dealing with now. But let's add a title. Not everyone's going to know what that is, and if we are using this in a client meeting, then I don't think I need that. But then it might be nice for the client to also have an idea of what's going on there. Legend. I'm going to put my neck on the line here and say legend is the one we're looking for. No. We probably should put the legend up there. But what I'm looking for is the title output. So unfortunately I did put my neck on the line there and was wrong. Let's see what kind of information is coming out of this. Title output. I have a bunch of meshes. And so I'm going to need to figure out what I want to show. I'm assuming each mesh is each letter or symbol. So I'm just going to grab a new component here. So that's easy to output. But then kind of questioning whether or not I want it to be down here now with that big. That's a lot of text. I'll need to work with Eric and Ira to see how much information we actually need on the screen for the designers to see. But for now, I'm just going to put all that information there. And then I can delete this, and I'm going to add that title to this mesh display relay component and delete that. And now let's see what's coming out of that legend output. So like I've been doing, just double click on the canvas and type in panel, and that's just going to be a component that shows you what's being what's coming out of each output. Legend. So this is also just a bunch of meshes. So that should also be able to just be plugged straight into the component. We could potentially put that in a different location though, and change the scale of that component. So I'm gonna do that and bring that back here. I'm gonna delete this information. All this human UI stuff I can rebuild this 4 components. So to make it easier, I'm going to kind of slide everything back. I'm going to try to organize a little bit some of this stuff so that I know what's going on. So this is the Windrose graph location and scale. And then I can turn off these wires so that so everything looks a little bit cleaner. completely hidden. There we go. And so what I'm going to want to do is I want to make that legend a little bit smaller. Could grab in the comments, Evan's saying that I could grab the location info and title from an earlier component in the graph, which I could do. Here's a part, so once we start to change the analysis period, nice thing about this is it's going to update. So, and yeah. We'll have to figure it out. I'll get with Eric and Ira to see what information we actually need, and then as we build this dashboard up, we'll see what duplicate data we have that we don't necessarily need to continue to propagate throughout the whole entire dashboard. So like I could foresee Sacramento International Airport. I could see that line being removed. Potentially the analysis period being removed, as that might be an overall dashboard item and not just specifically Windrose. So I could see keeping Windrose. I could see keeping, I guess, these last three potentially, because that gives you more information specific to the Windrose graph. But I'll get with Eric and Ira to make sure that's, I guess, the direction. So now I'm wanting to reduce the legend for the Windrose. So I'm going to grab that legend, I'm going to remove that from this mesh relay, and I'm going to drag that up into this project render mesh to screen component. So what I did is I just copied the scale factor slider, and I'm going to plug that into, I'm just going to replace it there. I'm going to change the scale of that item. So I'm going to also need to change the location now. So I'm actually going to delete that, which is just going to make it massive. And I'm going to just copy that whole thing, because I'm going to need a new location and I'm going to need a new scale. I'm going to group that together, and I'm going to call this Windrose scale location size. So now I can make that smaller, and then I can move this kind of over and down. I want to make it, and I want it to be aligned with the bottom, to be aligned with the S as much as possible. 170 or 781. So I want it to be in the middle. 794. Right. Perfect. I'm a little bit, maybe I shouldn't say a little bit, but I am pretty particular. This one, I'll leave it at that. I like things to be aligned, whatnot. All right, so that is going to be fine for me. at least for now, for the Windrows. Potentially, I'd want to move Windrows up to the top here, or even maybe rotate it and have it on the side. I mean, there's a lot of different options that we could work out. So I'm gonna also hide these wire displays. And then I'm going to also name this component. Just going to copy this group name. Or I could just add it to that group. That would be an even better idea. Add to group. And then we could probably add all of this to a group as well. So that's a group within a group. I'm not sure if you knew you could do that. It's kind of like the matrix. Yeah. So I'm pretty satisfied with that as a jumping off point. And now, well, it's 10:57, so we got 3 minutes, which I don't think is going to be enough time to really look at any other graphs. Or do really any more like productive work. So with that, I guess I'll probably just cut this first live feed of the digital practice. As always, let's continue to build a solid foundation, and let's keep moving forward by working smarter, not harder, like using these tools that I'm showing you guys here, and let's continue to do good work. Until next time, have a good one.